Everyone talks about compound interest like it's magic, as if all you need to do is invest a little and wait. But the truth is, most people won't get rich this way. Not because the math doesn't work, but because they don't. In this video, I'll show you exactly why compound interest alone won't save you, and what you actually need to do to build real wealth, faster, smarter, and without relying on time alone. Let's go. But don't forget to subscribe if you watch until the end and like what I show you here. Thank you. Well, in this first part, let me explain how compound interest works. Compound interest is what happens when your money doesn't just earn money. It earns money on the money it already earned, over and over again. You put your cash to work and it starts hiring more workers. Then those workers start working too. And suddenly, you've got an army growing your wealth while you sleep. The formula is simple. Final amount equals the initial capital multiplied by 1 plus the interest rate, raised to the power of time. Sounds boring until you see what it actually does. Take $10,000. Let it grow at 10% per year. After 1 year, you've got $11,000. Not mind-blowing yet, but fast forward to 10 years. You're looking at almost $26,000. Go to 20 years, over $67,000. Leave it for 30 years, it becomes almost $190,000. And if you let that same $10,000 grow untouched for 50 years, now we're talking over $1 million. Same 10,000, same 10% return. The only difference? Time. Now, imagine you didn't just do that once. Imagine you did that every year, every month, every time you got paid. That's how fortunes are built quietly. And no one shows this better than Warren Buffett. He didn't invent a new product. He didn't win the lottery. He just started investing early and never stopped. Buffett bought his first stock at age 11. By the time he was 30, he had around $1 million. At 50, that became nearly $300 million. But the real shock? More than 90% of his current net worth, which is now over $100 billion, came after he turned 65. Think about that. Buffett got rich slowly and then all at once. That's compound interest. It moves like a glacier. Then suddenly, it moves like a rocket. And that's the point. It rewards those who give it time and punishes those who interrupt it. Buffett's fortune wasn't built on luck. It was built on math, multiplied by time, fueled by consistency. Now, moving to the second part, let's talk about the harsh reality of compound interest. Many people feel deceived by financial influencers or simply curse or send hate messages in DMs because, well, if it's so easy, why aren't we all rich with this wonder? The thing is, you can't have all three at the same time. 1, speed, 2, quality, and 3, low price. In other words, if you want to get rich quickly, you'll have to invest large amounts and invest with quality. If you want to get rich starting small, with a small investment, you'll need patience because it won't happen quickly and you'll have to invest with quality. Now, if you want to invest poorly in any way, without studying, with a small investment, you won't get rich quickly. You won't have high speed. This is the logic of wealth. It can also be applied to work. For example, an investment bank analyst grows quickly in their career and eventually earns a lot, but their quality of life isn't the best because it's a stressful job. Now, someone who chooses to work with what they love, like film animation, something artistic and fun, will probably take longer to advance, despite eventually earning a good salary, because doing what you love means you'll dedicate yourself more. And I'm speaking here very personally, because my dream was to animate films, like for Pixar, but coming from a middle-class family, I also wanted to be financially free, which is why I chose to work in financial advisory services and dedicate myself to the world of finance. Now I have the freedom to do whatever I want, and eventually, if I wanted to become a film animator, I could. But going back to compound interest, most people can't invest large amounts of money because, well, if they're looking to get rich, it's probably because they don't have the money right now. And most people have enough income to cover their expenses without saving anything. Even if they manage to save a little, there is something called the life cycle savings hypothesis. The life cycle hypothesis says that people naturally save during their working years and spend during retirement. That sounds smart in theory. You earn money while you're young, invest it, let compound interest work for decades, and then live off that growth when you're older. But here's the problem. Compound interest needs time. Life doesn't give you much. In real life, most people start saving late. In their 20s, they're broke or paying off student loans. In their 30s, they're raising kids or buying homes. By the time they have real disposable income, often in their 40s or 50s, they've already lost the most powerful ingredient in compound interest: early years. You can't compress 40 years of compounding into 15. The math just doesn't work. And then comes retirement, the second breaking point. The life cycle model says that once you stop working, you're supposed to spend what you've accumulated. But the moment you start withdrawing, you're no longer compounding. You're decumulating. You're pulling money out of the system, and that exponential curve everyone talks about, it flattens. So think about it. Most people start saving too late to see the full power of compounding. And then they start spending just when compounding could have gotten truly powerful. That's the hidden flaw. Compound interest takes off in the final decades, but most people never make it that far, or if they do, they can't wait anymore. The life cycle model forces you to interrupt compounding at both ends. You start too late. You stop too early. Warren Buffett's fortune exploded after age 65. But you might need the money at 65. And from an early age, Buffett made difficult decisions and lived a very low-income lifestyle to save enough money and invest as much as possible. So, it was also a life of sacrifice to get to this point. Besides being an extraordinary investor, he chose the right investments at the right time on several occasions. So, for an ordinary person, although Buffett is an inspiration, it's not possible to follow exactly the same path and make billions because he is an exceptional human being. But concluding everything here, that's why compound interest doesn't work for most people in real life. Not because the math is wrong, but because life, and the way most people live it, doesn't match the timeline that compounding needs. In this third part, we will fix the problem. Well, first, let's understand your goal. If your goal until now is to honestly get rich as quickly as possible, the solution is to make more money and be lucky. You should be studying sales, entrepreneurship, and you should understand that compound interest isn't your whole game. It will help your wealth grow over time, but it won't get you rich quickly unless you make large investments. Understand that investing is like taking a supplement to train. You won't get strong if you take the supplement and stay on the couch. You'll get strong if you combine training with the supplement. And you can get strong quickly just by training hard. I know people who got rich just by working and then figured out how to start investing to protect their money and make it grow even more only after they became rich. But one thing I recommend to everyone is setting a realistic goal and starting to invest as soon as possible. And I'll give you two big reasons. The first is because exploding and making absurd amounts of money out of thin air also involves luck and risk. The second is that compound interest works best in the long run, as I've already shown. So even if you start with small amounts, time is already working in your favor. Buffett started small, not by investing $40,000 a month. So even if you're not looking to get rich only in the long term, you don't lose anything by playing the long game as well, because it's better to get rich at 60 than never to get rich at all. So this is the math you have to do to set your real goal. I will create just an example here. If I want to retire with $150,000 per year, the real question isn't just how much do I want to earn, but how much do I need to have invested to sustain that lifestyle, accounting for inflation over time. Let's assume I'm investing in the S&P 500, which has historically returned about 10% per year before inflation, and that the average inflation in the United States is around 2.5% per year. To figure out the real return, that is, how much my money actually grows after accounting for inflation, I use the Fisher formula. Real return equals 1 plus nominal return divided by 1 plus inflation minus 1 plugging in the numbers. Real return equals 1.10 divided by 1.025 minus 1. Real return is approximately 0.0731 or 7.31% per year. Now that I know my investments are growing at 7.31% annually above inflation, I can calculate how much I need to retire forever without ever touching the principal. The formula is required amount equals desired annual income divided by real return substituting. Required amount equals 150,000 divided by 0.0731. Required amount is approximately $2,050,000. That's how much I would need to have invested to retire with $150,000 per year, adjusted for inflation, forever, without running out of money. So here's the conclusion. If I want to live off my money forever, I need $2,050,000 invested. All of this already factors in inflation. That's how freedom is built, with math, not with guesses. But you will need to invest that money. And if compound interest and investing for long-term goals doesn't work for most people because of how life works, then the only way to make it work is to adapt the strategy to real life. That means accepting that income changes over time, accepting that risk tolerance changes over time, and most importantly, allocating your portfolio accordingly across your life. And that's why I think the perfect strategy is to divide by age. In your 20s and early 30s, you're in what I call the accumulation phase. You can afford to allocate 80% of your portfolio to riskier assets that maximize long-term growth, with the remaining 20% in bonds or cash, or something safe to add a small cushion. I think that less than 20% is very risky, but 20% looks good. And this is when you take maximum risk, because you have 40 plus years until retirement. You have time to recover from any market crashes. You also probably don't have that much money invested yet, so even if the market drops 30%, you're not losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're building the foundation. The mistake most people make in their 20s is being too conservative. Being overly cautious with your investments in your 20s and 30s can hold you back from reaching your full financial potential. They keep too much in cash or bonds because they think it's safer, but inflation will eat your money alive and you'll miss out on decades of compound growth. This is your risk-taking decade. If you lose money, you have time to make it back. In your 30s and early 40s, you're still in accumulation mode, but now you might have a house, kids, bigger expenses. You can start to balance out out your portfolio by allocating 60 to 80% to riskier assets and 20 to 40% to safer. You're still prioritizing growth, but you're adding some stability. You probably have more money invested now, so the dollar amounts at risk are bigger. But you still have 20 to 30 years until retirement, so time is still your friend. The key thing in this phase is not to panic during market downturns. Market corrections and bear markets are normal parts of investing and are almost always followed by recoveries and new market highs. You want to keep investing through the bad times, not stop. When you hit your late 40s and 50s, you enter what I call the preservation phase. As you enter your 40s and 50s, you don't need to ditch stocks entirely. Instead, aim for steady growth while adding more protection. Now you're allocating maybe 60 to 70% to riskier assets and 30 to 40% to safer assets. You're still growing your money, but you're protecting what you've built. This is usually your peak earning years, so you should be contributing the maximum to your retirement accounts. But you're also getting closer to retirement, so you can't afford to lose everything in a market crash and have only 10 years to recover. Then in your 60s and beyond, you move into the income phase. Around retirement age, your priorities shift towards preserving your wealth while still allowing room for steady growth. Now you might do 40% riskier assets and 60% safer. You're focused on generating income and preserving capital. But here's what most people get wrong about retirement allocation. Some retirees feel tempted to move out of riskier assets completely, but doing so can expose you to the risk of outliving your savings. You might live for 30 years in retirement. If you put everything in bonds yielding 3% and inflation is running at 3%, your money isn't growing at all. You need some riskier assets to keep growing your wealth even in retirement. The beautiful thing about this age-based strategy is that it adapts to where you are in life. When you're young and can take risks, you take them. When you're older and need stability, you get conservative. It's not about timing the market or picking the perfect investments. It's about matching a risk to your life stage. This isn't just theory. This is how wealth gets built in the real world. You start aggressive when you have time and get conservative when you need the money.